What up, everybody? It's the 2040 podcast, back for episode 18, going harder than Pep thought we would. This is the podcast where we, tell you what we thought what we did in our 20s and what we learned all the way going to our 40s, and all of us are pretty established in our careers and relationships. My name's Steven. I'm going to be hosting today. We got Aubrey and Sirod here. Today's episode, we're going to talk about censorship and freedom of speech. I know it's kind of one of those talking points right now that are going around. So I think it's just, maybe indicative of the changing times of freedom of speech. I know from when we were 20 to, now being 40, it's 20 years of what we see, not only from censorship from, maybe newspapers and TVs, but now we got social media and everything going on and how censorship might have changed from then. So I wanted to just first start off with just telling people, obviously everyone knows in the Constitution, you have a freedom of speech, right? That Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. And, this clause guarantees individuals the right to express ideas and information without government interference or regulation. However, that right is not absolute because they have narrowed it down over the Supreme Court. Some of those limitations are just like incitement to imminent lawless actions, kind of what they try to get Trump for on January 6th, right? That he gave the speech and then therefore that incited people to go and rush the Congress. If you make threats, true threats to people that you're going to take some action against them, that's not protected speech. Obscenity, that's not protected speech, right? And that's under there's a test that they do. So just like that back in the day was pornography, right? I think like in the early like 50s or something. And then you have defamation, right? If you say something that's false that hurts a person's reputation, that's not protected and you can get sued for it. But even though we have all these freedoms and the government's not supposed to do these things, I think we've seen lately that the government can and will. I know in our group chat we talked about Jimmy Kimmel, right, and them trying to take him off the air, and if the FCC could pull licenses and stuff like that, but also what is the government also not giving to us, right? And some of the stuff is, especially since the Charlie Kirk thing that's been in the news, there's been a lot of just different takes on, what is the government allowed to tell us? How are they flooding it, right? And I think, when we started, a lot of things was on TV and a lot of things were in newspapers, but now everyone's getting stuff on social media. And how does social media then play in as a factor of not only just propaganda, but censoring things by pushing a narrative, right? So I guess the first question I would just ask you guys is one, do you see censorship, right? And in the everyday, and how do you think that censorship from when we were 20 now to 40 has really changed in your perspective?
I'll let you go first, Rod. You big on censorship.
You're right. I don't like people telling me what to do. But like we talked in that episode about the word that we shall not speak, nigga. At some point you're going to be in a position where you can't say what you want to say. That episode kind of really stemmed from when I'm at work. There's a certain way that I talk. I'm in HR, so I'm literally typing up suspensions and reprimands for people right now because they went to their boss and said, something silly, stop talking to me. Just that word right there, stop talking to me, in the tone, I'm like, hey man, you're suspended for a day. So like when it comes to free speech, there's a lot of rules and background that goes with it. I will say that the FCC, from what I'm seeing, has always done this type of stuff. People just have a short-term memory. Everybody's very upset because Trump is the big bad mean guy. No, Trump is just doing what politicians have always been doing behind closed doors. You know what I mean? Like Biden did the same stuff to Twitter, Facebook, and other social media accounts when it came to COVID. Bill Maher, my guy, I've been watching him for 25 years. ABC kicked him off the air 20 plus years ago because of comments he made about 9/11. And again, he's one of my favorite liberals because he will call liberals out, and he will have conservatives on his show. And so I really like his perspective on life. But so if he was, I can't remember what he said, but if he was bringing something up, it was probably similar to what's going on in Gaza right now, because he's a very realist when it comes to just saying what, the situation is, and not just following the crowd. So censorship, free speech, all that is kind of a facade. You can't say what you want at work. You can't say what you want to say. We said if we say nigga every 15 seconds on this podcast, we're not going to get sponsorships. Free speech is kind of a facade to me that has always been policed the same way as being policed today in the news with Jimmy Kimmel, except usually it's behind closed doors. They don't come on TV and say it's going to be this way or that way. It's like, nah, you're not supposed to say that on a podcast. You're just supposed to, email them and say, look, we're going to do it this way or the other way.
I think looking at things, you got to understand there's always going to be a narrative, because things in this world are controlled by men and women, which always have an agenda and a narrative. So the news channels, politicians, there's always going to be some kind of narrative. And I think one thing we've got to remember is we've got to remember to ask ourselves, am I taking this with a grain of salt? Have I researched this myself? For example, I did just see that Google admitted that the Biden administration threatened them to take some content off about COVID. And I don't know exactly what that content was, but I do remember when COVID came out, it seemed like, man, like there really is they want this to create something. And I get it. I'm in the medical field. Personally, I was very apprehensive personally about vaccine coming out super fast when I'd already heard things about the flu vaccine, which really don't say it works that well, because they have to kind of guess like 6 to 9 months in advance if this strain or that strain will work. And I'm like, you guys came out with a COVID one way quicker than that. But it was like, hey, we say this and this is how it is. And anybody that dissents is un-American, it's not healthy, it's not okay. Like, it was major censorship around that. And I'm just like, I get it. Sometimes we need to move fast because, lives are at risk and all this stuff. But I also understand that as I've grown in my years, I've started to see that pattern with the government pretty frequently. Something will happen and they'll kind of like strong arm it. And then a few years later, it'll be like, oh, my bad. We actually messed up on that. If you just saw right now, this recording right now just came out as Trump just went on and talked about Tylenol being linked to autism and pregnant mothers taking it. Now, there's some inconclusive evidence and some conclusive evidence. One thing that we do know for sure that's, you can't deny it, is that autism has been increasing significant. I think it was like one in 1,000 a generation ago, and now it's like 1 in 100 or maybe 1 in 30. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's increased crazy. So there is something going on. Now, is it Tylenol? It may be, but whatever it is, we need to figure it out. But when they come on, and they usually haven't, I think about a month or two ago, they came on and said the CDC had suppressed some research about links to autism for certain things. And usually what happens is this is what the government will do. They'll strong arm it, and then later they'll say, I'm sorry, or this is where we messed up, but the damage is already done.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I think for everybody, we just need to be aware of. It's kind of like, you got to take things with a grain of salt, man.
And I agree with both of you in the fact that, the government, I think our lack of faith or lack of believability in our government is a problem, right? And I think, I know everyone's up in arms now about what's happening to Jimmy Kimmel. No, like I said in the group chat, I don't think Jimmy Kimmel's the right vessel. I've been watching Jimmy Kimmel since the Man Show when he was doing crazy things. But at the same time, free speech is not just for people I agree with, but also people I don't agree with, right? And I think the government has been to a point now where, what no one talks about with censorship is Obama, right? WikiLeaks, Edward Snowden, right? Like, while those were leaks about what the U.S. government was committing war crimes in Iraq with the video that the collateral damage video that WikiLeaks leaked out, and then what Edward Snowden was telling us about our own government spying on us, right? They shut that all down. Like, they even had the old Twitter guy. I forget his name now, the one that sold it to Elon Musk. he was the one censoring Twitter back in the day when you were trying to, Hillary Clinton, when we were talking about her emails and stuff. And it's not that they're real emails, you could go see them. WikiLeaks dropped them, and then Julian Assange just got released right at the end of Biden. He was
Biden's son. Biden's son. I saw a lot of conservatives trying to bring up topics about
right,
his son, and you would notice on the liberal channels, they never spoke about it. I
right,
wonder why.
right. And and I think I kind of want to shift from, what obviously the government has, we've seen now that the government has high reach and can suppress stuff on the internet, it, from all shapes and walks of life, right? On what they want out there and they don't want out there. But now I think the censorship is, if a narrative is catching hold with people, flooding social media, flooding the airwaves with a dominant narrative so that you hear it so much that it has to be true, right? And I think the biggest one that we can see is like right after, who's talking about who's buying TikTok right now, right? Everyone's so upset and mad right now of going back and forth with, this Charlie Kirk stuff and, now the Tylenol stuff. Think of all the things that you've heard this week and how many of them have told you anything about who's buying TikTok. Who's Larry Ellison? What does he do? He owns a company named Oracle. What does Oracle do? They're a cloud computing company that also does surveillance AI. One being with Israel, right? So, and now they're going to work with the U.S. government. They have a contract with the U.S. government now. So anyone that's on TikTok is most likely now going to have all their data held with Oracle, who can then, we've seen Facebook do it many of times, all the social media companies do it, sell your data to a third party for whatever the reason is. And now they can look to see what you're doing. And that content that you're putting down, do they have a problem with it? How many people right now on TikTok are getting banned, or all their old videos are taken down, especially a lot of the Free Palestine movement stuff. Like they're shutting all of it down. The actual content person over TikTok now is actually from Unit 8200 in the IDF. People should Google this stuff just so they know. But I guess the question then becomes, right, when we see that there's censorship, how can we try to get people, right, to try to fight back against the censorship of our government, right? Like how can we actually do something, and whether it's little or big, I don't want, you don't got to get big ideas, but how can we fight back against our government purposefully trying to censor things by either blocking it out or flooding us with just propaganda, which could be just different news stories?
Yeah, we've talked about some of these things in different ways. I mean, one, you got to diversify your information. Like you can't just listen to your liberal news station or your conservative news station, or all your friends on your Facebook are conservative, or vice versa. You're not really getting a full picture. I think a point I was going to say previously was, to me, here we go with my nonchalant attitude. Like, I really don't give a shit. I'm not going to do anything. I think that's what separates the other people we've talked about on this podcast, is the Harriet Tubmans, the Malcolm X's, the Freds, the Martin Luther Kings, the Charlie Kirks, for those people who want to listen to him. I think they're the ones who are out there saying, ask more questions. Charlie Kirk was kind of pushing against, right, college and other institutional things, and saying, if you think you have to go to college to be smart, in his eyes, he's like, look at me. So I think people are fighting it in their own way, but only a certain group of people can fight it. I'm not one of them. So the advice I would give somebody is, if you're gonna try to do it, you got to make sure you're not stuck in your little bubble, and anybody who says anything against something you want to say, you want to censor them or tell them they're wrong. I saw somebody arguing yesterday about the difference between Colin Kaepernick and people saying, keep politics out of sports. I'm not watching football no more. And we know who I'm talking about when I say that shit. And then now Charlie Kirk, everybody was cool with him being plastered up on the screen as if he was some kind of, great example for everybody, but he wasn't. He was a great example to, we know what kind of people I'm talking about, conservatives and liberals. They're all fighting over this platform. But somebody's in the comments basically saying, I don't see how they're the same. He was killed. I'm like, dog, Kaepernick was kneeling for people who were getting killed. You're only worried about Kaepernick kneeling, but you're not looking at the reason he was kneeling. And it's actually the same of them trying to plaster Kirk on the big screen. It was the same message both of them were trying to talk about: free speech and just freedom for minorities in this country that he felt that they don't have. But people are stuck in their bubble. They're not even. I'm not in the bubble. I don't feel like it. So I'm reading the comment like, yeah, I get both their points, but they're arguing because they couldn't even see each other's point. So that's what you have to do if you're going to try to fight back against, the government suppression of information. The first thing I see everybody has to do is they have to open up their mind and get out their little bubbles. But that ain't happening no time soon. So that's why I'm staying, in my zone. I'm like, I'm gonna talk with y'all. I'm gonna talk with my conservative friends, my liberal friends, and just try to keep my mind fresh for my son and our future, so that we don't get trapped in some BS. Because it's a really sad world to get trapped in if you're just stuck on Fox News, all day.
I could definitely see that how easy it gets to just kind of like be in an echo chamber and kind of hear the same things over and over, especially as you grow and your kind of like circle starts to get smaller and your media outlets that you like tend to be the same. I think one of the things that can really help is, questioning some of our biases. Like sometimes I'll just have to sit and question some of the things that I think are true because of why, and think maybe do I have some biases? Because I can always look at the world and say, well, this is the way they treat this people and this is the way they treat that people. And the first thing that makes it easy for is me to get cynical and me to get pessimistic and me to say F it. But that doesn't really benefit anything. So I think the first thing I've had to do is, number one, be aware of my own lens that I have on that I'm looking at things through. Be willing to be open to it being a different way than I think it's going to be. And by that, I mean, am I willing to be open to other people's point of view in my circle, right? Am I going to really affect the viewer of a Fox News or a CNN on the other side of the world? Probably not. But the people I come into contact with at the grocery store, in my work, when I'm at the park with my daughter, can I be a little bit more open, or can I be a little bit more willing to see other people's perspectives and how they might think this? Because then my interactions can maybe show somebody that might think that these people are like that. Because some people might look at me and think I'm a liberal. Some people, might look at me and my profession and what I've achieved and think I'm a conservative. But if I can just have them see that, oh, this person could be different than I thought, it maybe can set the groundwork to having them start to question all these other kind of assumptions. It's kind of like, for example, when somebody meets me and I'm at work and I have my tattoos covered, right? They'll think of me because I come in, maybe I'm a physical therapist, I'm in the medical, profession or setting. They think of me in a certain way. If that same person were to meet me out while I have a tank top on, right, and I'm at the park with my daughter playing, hanging out in some shorts, they might think of me in a different way. But can I be a way that they can say, man, maybe those people can be different than I thought, and that just a little bit of kind of jarring their reality might have them start to think about how they think about what they hear on the news about other people in Palestine, in Gaza, in, all the censorship things. I think that's one of the biggest things that I try to do is I try to be a different way than people think that their stereotypes are told them I should be. And it will be easy to be that way. But then I can have them start to think and question these other stereotypes, because I think that's the biggest thing. We just don't have enough time to research all these things. So we just take what the media says at heart so we can just not have to do anything. But that's lazy. That's lazy. And if we can just put a little bit more effort towards that, I think that can really help towards things of that. I'm not going to call it ignorance, but it is almost an ignorance.
And the where I think people just got to touch grass sometimes, right? Like get off the internet sometimes. Go talk to real people. Go talk to, you know, just, if you're only looking at what the internet is telling you, I think sometimes, especially when it's like, they're always trying to bait you with race, politics, religion, all these things. And you go out and you talk to regular people, most people don't
Yeah.
They ain't worried about that. Most people are just worried about their families. They're worried about having health care, their kids having good educations, having clean water, affordable food, and housing, right? Like those are the things that all kind of unite us all when we have families and we're growing up. There's a reason why we all kind of gravitate towards each other in our 20s because we all kind of are similar. And now we're gravitating toward each other again in our 40s because we're still on the same mission in the path, right? But if I was just to like look at screenshots of you guys throughout the years, right? How that perspective or perception could be isn't real, right? Like that's just what you're seeing on the internet. And I think the other thing that people really can do and probably should do, right? And I think back to like the civil rights movement, right? Like when black people were trying to come up out of Jim Crow, right? What did they do? They protested, right? They're trying to limit, they're trying to censor your protests, right? We have the flotilla from floating into Gaza trying to give humanitarian aid, and they actually getting backed by Greek and Turkish drones and navies because Israel might try to bomb them. They already bombed them one time on a drone while they're floating over there in international waters, right? Bet you people haven't heard that. That's censorship. But you can boycott, right? Like boycotting is like an American principle, right? The four founders went and dumped how much tea into the the Boston Tea Party. They millions of dollars of tea, right? They boycotting the tax by throwing out
They
the tea.
dumped those Disney Plus subscriptions. That's what they
Yeah,
did.
they did that too when they
They,
did it, right? But conservatives boycott things all the time, right? They were boycotting Disney over whatever they perceive to be LGBTQ being pushed on the kids on Disney, right?
I remember that. Yeah.
Boycotting is American as it comes. You don't like something, you don't like the way people are acting. How do you hit them in a capitalist society? Take away their inflow of money. And I think what's happening now, how boycotting is it's being censored, right? And it's not being censored in a way that you can boycott anything you want about in America. As Americans, we can talk as much shit as we want of our country in any country we want. We're Americans. It's our freedom of speech. We can say whatever we want whenever we want, right? We can take away your dollars. If all of us don't like what you're putting out, we can take away all your dollars. But there's one thing you can't talk about. And for some reason, that's Israel. And all of our laws, right now, you can't they're trying to take away the right to boycott Israel right now for a genocide. Like you people have apps where they look and they scan it and see, hey, is this owned by an Israeli company? And they won't buy it. And now you can't boycott another country. But I bet you if we wanted to boycott Russia, we have no problem. If we want to boycott China, you'd have no problem. Iran, no problem. But there's one country we can't do it for. And I think that when you do this and you start censoring that, people are going to start getting mad because now they're saying, wait, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up. So you don't care about what I say about you or you or you, but I can't say something about some random person around the world for me. What do we do, right? And so I guess one of the questions we should ask is, you know, why is it that they're not letting us talk about these things, right? Because we know if we talk about these things, it's going to bring us all closer together, but we can't. So why can't we talk about those things? And why, if we can't talk about these things, can we not question anything? There's not, and I get the problem with questions, but why can't we question things, right? And I guess that's my question to you guys. Those two questions is why can't we do these things? Why do you feel that those are the reasons we can't?
I just want to say to any Israelis listening to this, yo, I don't mess with you. Yo, hey, all power to y'all. I don't know what he's talking about. He didn't tell us he was gonna be no, I'm joking. No, I mean I think this is what they have to do in real life, right? Apologize to like certain entities. Um, I will. My point to that is I don't know. I mean, we said it in we're starting to kind of overlap as we get into so many episodes. But I mean, isn't there more money in divisiveness than there is in togetherness? Isn't there more? I mean, like I said, I truly believe. I know for a fact. I don't even. It's like I would put $1 billion on it. When these politicians are on your news channel or my news channel and they're going back and forth, I turn to Fox News and they're like the Democrats or blah 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 blah, and then CNN's like, and then these conservatives, the Republicans, And I know as soon as they say, all right, cut, and they take off the microphone, you know, I've been to DC, bro. They in the little lunch area. They got their nice mansions in DC. Like, we've looked at their net worths. All of them jumped up tens of hundreds of millions of dollars. So we're the joke. The divisiveness is where the money is, where the attention is, and it keeps them in power because for some reason people think if I keep voting for Nancy Pelosi, if I keep voting for Mitch McConnell, I don't know how these people just keep getting voted in. They don't, none of them do anything. But I think they keep us pissed. I think that's how they stay in power. They keep us mad, they keep us pissed, they keep us focused on one thing. Because, like you said, if they brought up, hey, fireman saves such and such, you know, not cat, but you know, missing girl. I think what conservative or liberal is going to look at that and be like, man, turn that shit off, right? We're all going to enjoy and clap for that firefighter. We're all going to enjoy and clap for that teacher who took a special needs kid and stuck with them and got him to graduate from a university. Like, these are all stories that we know are out there, but they're not divisive. And there's no money, and Fox News and CNN ain't making no money by talking about that shit. So they have to talk about the stuff that divides us. And I think that's the problem, where you could protest all you want, but like you said, in a capitalistic society, that money is what's going to run it, and divisiveness to me is where all the money is at.
I've seen a lot of people watch a lot of news. Personally, I don't watch news, and I heard Denzel Washington say this, right? The prophet, right? The mindset mentor. Now, he's just a great actor, but he said something that made a lot of sense. He said you can watch news and be misinformed, or you can not watch anything and be uninformed. So it's like the worst of two worlds, you know. But what I've seen is kind of like what Siraj just said. A lot of the news is in a tone and in an energy of making you mad. It's always about making you mad about something. And I think it speaks to an underlying feeling in some people, many people, I don't know if I would say most people, but almost like it's their fault. It's somebody else's fault that I am where I am. Somebody's holding me down. Somebody's the reason why I can't get there. Now, has there been that? And is there a little bit of that, especially for minorities? I'd probably say, yeah. But one thing I do know is that anger alone, for anger's sake, doesn't do anything. If you just sit there and watch these news and you sit on your couch or you sit in your car and you're just mad and then you go back to your normal life, nothing's changed. All you did was get mad for a little bit of time, and that doesn't serve you. So, like, for example, when I'm in some of my patients' home and even some family members' home, I see the news on all the time. I'm like, bro, I can't even take it. It's like an energy coming from the TV that really irks me because I'm used to no news. Once you're kind of with it all the time, I think you get used to it. Almost like you're used to it, like you think it's your friend kind of talking to you, where they're not your friend at all. But I think it's just that understanding is that it is there to make you mad because that's how they make money. Now, should you be not informed at all? I don't say that, but I think you should take it in the right amount of dosage. How many like headlines do you need to know about? What do you need to know about? Take that and have a certain amount, just like kind of like social media. Are you supposed to be on social media all day? No. But do you want maybe 30 minutes to catch up with maybe some of your friends and family? Cool. Now, 30 minutes is really different from 3 hours or 6 hours. Same thing with news. So how much are you going to have? What does it take you to do? And if you are getting mad, kind of like Stephen asked, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to boycott? Are you going to start posting educational things that kind of debunk some of these things that you think are inaccurate? Or are you just going to sit there and get mad and point fingers? Because if you're just going to sit there, get mad and point fingers, it doesn't help them and it doesn't help you. And I think just starting to have that awareness, like, what is the benefit I'm looking for this news for? Okay. And what am I going to take it to do? And once you're ready to do something, that's where we start talking about boycotting, you know, kind of like protesting. One thing I do have a lot of respect for are people like Colin Kaepernick, you know, Muhammad Ali. These are people that in the height of their career did things that were unpopular at cost them big time financially it was for something bigger than themselves, you know, and kind of like Siraj talked about, is everybody down to do that? No, I wish they were. The biggest thing is I don't even know if I do that. Like straight up, Muhammad Ali was world champion. He could have just said, cool, I'll go into the military. You knew they were going to give him a cushy job. He could have still boxed, but he said no, lost his world championship, lost years of prime fighting time, and basically got banished by the narrative at the time. How many people would do that? So I take that as like, damn, what can I have courage in that to do? Maybe it's not that big, but I got to take some of that courage too, because if other people can do it, I can do my part, kind of thing.
Real quick, just like Kirk and Martin Luther King getting that meme out there, I wouldn't put Kaepernick out there with Muhammad, man.
I wouldn't put
I
Kaepernick out there,
just
but I'm gonna tell you this for Kaepernick, like think about it, bro. A young cat coming into the NFL, average NFL career is like 2-3 years. You've only out of 30 years of grinding, you got maybe 2-3 years at your peak. For him to do that in the NFL at his peak of his career, I give it up to him. Is it the same level as Muhammad and Martin Luther? It's not. But in his sacrifice, I think it is. And that's why I give it up to him.
he was already on the bench. There was no sacrifice. That's all I'm saying.
But bro,
there was
Hold
the
up, hold
NFL,
up,
man.
hold up. First off, while he was on the bench because Blaine Gabbert was starting, he was still my man just went to the Super Bowl. We talking about a man that came up maybe a yard short of winning a Super Bowl.
He wasn't a starter. He
greatest...
wasn't a starter when he did that, so I don't want that narrative to be out
Oh,
there. Like he was at the peak of his career.
He took over for Alex Smith because he beat Alex Smith out, right? He beat Alex Smith out because he got hurt and then he couldn't get the job back. But let's not act like Colin Kaepernick doesn't have records in the NFL just for those couple years. And we're
not talking about those couple years. I'm saying let's not act like when he was kneeling or sitting that he was some kind of at his peak of his career like Muhammad Ali. He was sitting on the bench and he decided to start pouting about injustice.
No, see,
he didn't do it when he was in the Super Bowl. He didn't do it. He didn't do it years prior.
Understand. This is what I'm saying. It was his peak. Right. It was his peak to be in the NFL. Like, come on, let's think about it. All right, let's talk about us. Right, young cat coming up. Our biggest peak was when we were having fun, young, living the life. At the top of that peak, to do something that you know is going to cost you, and then it costs you, and you stick with it. What the biggest thing is, it happened, and he stuck with it. He didn't back off. He didn't say, "Yo, I'm no." He stuck with it. Knew it was going to cost him. I'm not saying he was the best athlete ever, but in his personal sacrifice, it's kind of like the story in the Bible when the poor woman gives 2 cents and the other people give like hundreds of dollars, and Jesus said the poor woman gave the most because it was the most of what she had. Colin Kaepernick's sacrifice from his journey, I think, was huge.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And this
he was a backup.
This is the other part of it.
He was a backup. Why are we talking like backup? If you're a backup in the NFL, that means you're not one of the best 31 players in the world. So what is he sacrificing? There's 100 backups. We're not saying anybody else is sacrificing anybody if they're a backup.
Okay,
you're a backup.
That's objective. Some people would say he at that time, some of the quarterbacks that were in the league, he was better than. But this is the other thing. The NFL also had to pay him out for colluding on keeping him out of the NFL.
And they did it to Shador, and they did it to Tebow, and they do it to a bunch of people. That they collude.
But they didn't pay them. Did they pay them a settlement because they brought the lawsuit? They had to pay out settlement dollars.
They didn't bring up lawsuits. They just got colluded.
How much did he get paid out
for me?
I think reports were because it's supposed to be under. They weren't supposed to say anything about it. I think it was like anywhere between 10 to 20.
10 to 20? I thought it was like 75, or he wanted 75. I don't know. Like,
yeah, it was only like 10 to 20, but still.
Agree to disagree. I thought
this is the thing. They didn't want emails. Again, it's just censorship, right? Because what we know of Colin Kaepernick is only that he's still running his organization, right? Know Your Rights organization, where he goes to schools, teach kids what their rights are. When dealing with the police, he's still talking about police. He won many awards after that because of his work on what he's doing for civil rights in police brutality. So I get why people don't like him, but
Well, hold on. You don't misconstrue what I'm saying. The only interjection I was saying was he was not in the same position to sacrifice like Muhammad Ali. I'm not going to let people walk around and say, Charlie Kirk was just like Martin Luther King. Stop it. Kaepernick was not. Now, because there were hundreds of other players that kneeled. There were hundreds of other players that kneeled. There were literally players
hundreds of other players?
Yes.
Hundreds? I need a list of this 100.
Okay, I'll give you the list. I was literally watching dudes doing cartwheels during the national anthem. But you know why nobody cared? Because they were actually starters and they were playing. So the teams were like, yo, just ignore that guy over there. Kaepernick only got the attention he got because they're like, why are we letting this guy who's not even relevant because he was a bench player make so much noise? And then he got Tebowed and Johnny Manziel, and then he got in that boat. But if he was still, Cam Newton or something like that, he had still been on the team. So I just think that I didn't like that they were making it seem like the reason he doesn't have a job was because he wasn't he wasn't one of the better players. I'm like, the NFL, they want to win. He wasn't that good at the time he was doing it anyways. And then years just kept going by and he wasn't getting better. He was only getting worse. So that's all I'm saying. What he did and what he's still doing, mad props to him. But every time we try to make it seem like they stole his career, I'm like, stop it. No,
I'm
they
not
didn't.
saying that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying they stole his career. What I am saying is his level of sacrifice is different for everybody. It's not going to be the same. Is it the level of Muhammad Ali? No, Muhammad Ali was a
That's
world
all I was
champion.
trying to say. I was just trying to make a little note about it. I didn't want to argue whether Kaepernick was great for the community or not. Clearly he is. But I just
Okay,
think
then we
that,
can all agree on that. We can all agree on
yeah, I
that.
was just like comparing him
His
to Muhammad.
sacrifice
I just think
wasn't
there needs
as
to be
big
levels to
as
it.
Muhammad
And
Ali.
Kaepernick
Right.
got
Muhammad
thrown
Ali
into
lost.
MLK and Muhammad Ali. And I'm
Bro,
like,
I just
he
think you're
did
being a
great, but
hater.
come
You're
on,
being
man.
a hater on the sacrifice.
What did he
Okay.
sacrifice?
But I think that's also tying it back into what the episode is about censorship, right? Is the narratives that we get, right? Like, I'm
True.
not talking
True.
about just about that, right? Just the narratives in general on what it is, right? Because you bring up something like Colin Kaepernick, right? Everybody has a narrative of their own on what they believe, and it's usually down a couple paths, right? Like, it's not like this thing. But that's the problem with censorship, right? Is it what just happened here, the anger and the divisiveness, is
I'll kill
what just
you.
happened,
I'll
right?
kill you.
Right? Like, that is just what this is the perfect example of it, right? And it doesn't have to just be, and that's just Colin Kaepernick, right? We're not talking about like global issues, world issues, economic issues, American issues, all these issues that we have. That is what can drive the wedge, is that right there. And that makes it so we don't talk about anything else than what we're arguing about, because we just want to, hey, right? And I think that was just a great way, maybe, to just kind of tie it all back and just say, going forward, when it comes to censorship, and now that we see that there's just different types of censorship, not just government taking away speech or not even giving you it, like you guys mentioned with COVID, but then also just flooding narratives and propaganda to just try to people that are speaking up and are speaking out against certain injustices or things that are going on are getting flooded out by a basically a bot farm, right? It's just there's more bots online than people now. So it's just the bots and the influencers, right? They pay people to start pushing, whether it be narratives or products and stuff. And so I guess if you take all that in and take all that in as a brand of censorship and not allowing you to boycott and protest and do these things, what is a takeaway that you can give to someone, in their 20s that see, because college campuses, nothing's more censored right now than college campuses. So what kind of nugget would you give to someone in their early 20s that's dealing with and seeing it and what they can, and if they're feeling a certain way, like what would just be your advice to them?
Yeah, luckily I had a college professor when I was stuck in my, oh, this is how black people think because of our movies, comedians, the people we look up to, our parents, who aren't, no diverse than the next Joe Schmo, was kind of what just happened, right? Understand, as at least from my perspective, and that's the funny thing with the podcast. It's like I don't even know, right? I'm just telling you from my 40 years of my experience. But look what just happened. If the title said, special needs kid graduates Harvard with one arm and his mom's worked three jobs, a great story. I'm a scroll past that, be like, that's great, and scroll past it. If I see Colin Kaepernick is just like Muhammad Ali, I'll be like, hey, no, he's not, no, he's not, and we gonna argue for like, and then the algorithm just keeps feeding you arguments and fighting and all that. So just be aware of that. Like, I guess we're just not wired to engage when it's something we all agree on. I mean, what am I going to comment? Hey, that was a great story. Yeah, that was a great story. What are we debating, or what are we talking about? So I think they purposely flood us with topics that they know are going to divide us. And if you keep that in mind and try to diversify your perspective, then hopefully you can be an informative adult and not be so angry. And again, when I watch the news, to Aubrey's point a while ago, I actually kind of watch it and smile because I kind of see past it when they talk about something like that's the most important topic for today. And I listen because again, it's what's on the news. They're telling me what's important, but I don't get mad. I don't get angry. I don't throw something at the TV. I just listen, try to inform myself and, just understand that this is what they want me to know, but they don't really care about knowing about, necessarily the most important issues, but the most divisive.
So basically, me and Sirod aren't cool anymore, and that's going to be what I took away. But the biggest thing that I would share with a 20-year-old is to be open to other points of view and other cultures, because maybe they have some things that could benefit you if you were to take them on. Naturally, I think coming up in our own culture, like Sherrod said, in our own household, from our parents, we tend to think one way. And if you never question that, you have some strengths from your culture, but you also have some weaknesses. And if you can just be open to some other ways of looking at things that could benefit you, the only person that gets benefited is you. And the only person that, if you're closed off, gets hurt is you. I think that's one thing people don't really understand. The more closed you off, nobody else really gets hurt. Yeah, they maybe miss out on you, but you're the one that misses out on all these things. Maybe this culture can teach you about compassion. Maybe that perspective can teach you about the importance of family relationships. Maybe this, way of thinking can really teach you about finances. And maybe this way of thinking can really teach you about the importance of being present. And these are all things that no one culture has, optimized, but every culture tends to have some benefits or some things that they're really strong in or some things that could really benefit us. And I think personally coming up, when I was younger, I was usually around a lot of Black crowd. And then as I got older and went into kind of like high school, I went to Beverly Hills High, very low Black population. My middle school was a lot of Black and brown. High school was less. College, I think, was like 4% at San Diego State University. Grad school was maybe 1%. I was forced into these other places, and I could have just shrunk back and be like, yo, let me just stay in this. And a part of that was comfortable. But then I also started to think, and say, what if there were some things I could learn just by being open to these other cultures, perspectives, and way of being that maybe could benefit me? And I think that just that openness, you can be so closed off, or you can have just the openness to be like, maybe. And I think that little difference, really what it comes down is to our ego. If you think you're already good and complete the way you are, and you don't need to get better, okay, cool. But again, you just get hurt. And if you are a work in progress and can get better and things could help you, and maybe you don't have the best way of looking at things, then what if it can? Like, I think that just little bit of shift in perspective, especially for males who can tend to have a lot of ego and think, I don't need anybody's help, I'm a lone warrior. I just seen people do so much better when they're just open.
And I agree with both of you. And I think just talking to people, man, just talk to as many people as you can. It doesn't even matter. Just echoing what you guys said, like that's all you can really do, right? And get involved in some things, care about some things, find some passions, right? Like, and then talk to people that have those same passions. And the one beautiful thing I love about American society is it's up to you, right? Like it's really up to you. How much you want to put yourself out there, you can do as little or none, or you can be all out there, it doesn't matter. But just know that the government historically has never been the one to give us the truth. And what Aubrey said about they'll strong arm this and then they'll say sorry later, right? There's a reason why Black people distrust the healthcare system after the Tuskegee experiments. You know what I'm saying? There's a reason why certain people just have distrust for the government, and I get the political leanings, but just know, just like Pep said, the politicians at the end of the day, they got the best healthcare in the country. They're always raising their pay. They have the best trades on Wall Street. They're not like you. They're not like us. You know what I'm saying? Like they are on a whole nother league. And when it's time for them to vote together, like not releasing the Epstein files, they can shut that down. Hey, we want your healthcare. Nope, we're gonna shut that down. You know what I'm saying? But they'll give you Amelia Earhart files. Who asked for all the undocumented releases of Amelia Earhart? Where did that come from? So the government's gonna give you everything, and all the narratives, and just know that they are the ones that are controlling a lot of your social media and controlling a lot of the AI and controlling all of what you see, right? Even if it's just like Jimmy Kimmel, right? They could, whoever they want on there, right? It's corporations and the government together giving you all this stuff. And it's okay to question things, right? Now, I'm not saying, is it okay for Black people to exist? Okay, I'm not going to go, maybe that's not the question you want, but to question narratives that are being pumped on you, right? That is okay. And it's okay to talk to other people about it. Being silent in the face of censorship is how censorship always wins. That's how it's in World War II, that's how it's won. You know, even during the Iraq-Afghanistan wars, that's how it's done. And that's how it's getting done now during a genocide. So just know that it's all out there, and it's okay to question, it's okay to do these things, and it's okay to talk to your neighbors and people in your community about these things, to say, hey, this guy on TV is telling me something. What do you think about that? And I guarantee you, most of the time, people will be like, I don't give a shit about that. Or one thing I do is I love watching the news, and it's only because I'm getting my news from all these other sources throughout the day. So I want to see what the narrative is at the end of the night that they're going to try to push on me. And then not only what the narrative is, but how much of that information are they really going to give you? Because sometimes it's a little bit of truth mixed with a little bit of embellishment, right? Like they're so it can fit the narrative, but they can't be caught lying, right? So I think both of you guys are 100% on everything you said when it comes to the censorship stuff, you know. And I'm so happy that the Colin Kaepernick debate kind of just put a cherry on top for what we're talking about with divisiveness. So you know, so that's the 20 to 40 podcast. That's episode 18. You know, thanks for everyone for tapping in with us. You know, like, share, subscribe, let everyone know about us. You know, and then until next time, you know, this is the 20 to 40 podcast.